Alrighty, well, welcome back. Still joined here with Jeremy Foster. I'm Christopher Harrison, and I like that. And this is mobile web application development. Now, in case you missed Module 1, rather lengthy Module 1, what we covered there was a conversation on design guidelines and different things to think about when you're doing your mobile applications. Now it's time to actually get in and start taking a look at some of the different tools that are available to us for actually building those apps. So Module 2 will take a look at building the UI. Module 3 will take a look at integrating touch. So Module 2, mobile UI. Now, we want to start off with CSS and media queries, because again, like I said in the prior module, you do want to avoid using JavaScript whenever possible. So if we can do it with CSS, let's do it with CSS. So we'll go in and take a look at our media queries. The next section, we're going to introduce Bootstrap. Now, there is a full MVA that John Galloway and I did on Bootstrap. If you go to mva.ms, just do a search for Bootstrap, you can go ahead and find that. And so we'll go ahead and introduce it, but I want to answer something right now that I saw asked a couple of times in the Q&A, which is, wait a minute, did you just tell us not to use Bootstrap? And the answer to that question is 100% no. I did not say don't use Bootstrap, or at least that wasn't the message I was trying to get across. The message that I was trying to get across is this: Bootstrap is wonderful, and I love Bootstrap, and we're going to take a look at how you can use Bootstrap inside of your mobile web apps. But the thing about Bootstrap is that it brings an awful lot of power to the table. And with great power, sometimes comes a little bit of, download and performance, and then you add on another JavaScript file and another JavaScript file and another dependency and another dependency. And next thing you know, you've got a relatively slow site. So before you start saying, well, I'm going to use this library, think about how much of that library you're going to use. So if the only thing that you're grabbing Bootstrap for is just for the ability to do the carousel, probably best to go to micro.js and find something that will do it for you instead of going with Bootstrap. But if you are going to be using Bootstrap to get that responsiveness, to get the automatic resizing, to take advantage of the grid system, to take advantage of pinning, to take advantage of all the different things that Bootstrap is going to give you, then 100% use Bootstrap. So if you're looking for only one or two things from Bootstrap, maybe not. If you're going to be using Bootstrap, use Bootstrap. So please don't take this as me saying don't use Bootstrap, because I love Bootstrap. All right. Then we'll go ahead and take a look at dealing with images, and then we'll finish it all off talking a little bit about how to mimic an app. But let's start off talking about CSS and our media queries. Now, 30-second CSS review. Cascading style sheets. You'll notice the keyword cascading. So I can have multiple style sheets, and I can have multiple declarations apply to the exact same item. Now, the basic rule of thumb here is highest precedence wins, or as I like to describe it, whatever best describes the item that you're about to change. So if I, in CSS, targeted an ID, that's always going to win because that's going to be the best match. If I targeted the class, that's going to be a good match. If I target the element, that's going to be the weakest match. So if I simply said that I want all H1 tags to be red, but I had one specific H1 tag that had an ID of label, and I said I wanted something with the ID of label to be blue, then that tag is going to be blue. The other big thing to keep in mind about CSS is last right wins. And they're going to be applied in order of the listing of our external files, whatever's inside the page itself, and then whatever might be on the actual element or tag itself. All right. There's our 30-second CSS. If you check out MVA, there's an awful lot on CSS. That's
30-second CSS brought to you in 4 minutes.
Exactly. It wasn't that long. Anyway, tough crowd here. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about browser detection here. I think we can all agree that browser detection is challenging at best, because user agent strings can be misleading. After all, IE still says Mozilla. They can be, true story, they can be spoofed. And really, it requires that I know what a browser can and can't do. Now, before you go off and start writing your own code, you'll notice there is a little library that's available to you that you could go ahead and use for browser detection. But at least for me, I don't care what the browser is. I don't. Because what's important to me as a web developer is what that browser does, not what it is. And this is where Moderniser comes into play. Now, what Moderniser will do is it will detect what the browser is capable of doing and then add classes based on its capability. So for example, when it runs, if it detects that you will support video, it'll automatically add in a class called video. And if it detects that you won't do video, it'll automatically add in a class that will say no video. And it's actually very easy to use. Let's go in and take a look here. So what I'm going to do is bail out of my slides here, and let's open up Visual Studio. There we go. And let me just add in a real quick new file here. This is going to be my little sample project here. And let's just say add and HTML. And this will be my Moderniser. Moderniser demo. There we go. And I'm going to add this in with a NuGet package. So let's just go ahead and right-click, manage NuGet packages, and Moderniser. Beautiful. And let's go ahead and hit install. And that was it. It really is that tiny of a file. So now I've got my little Moderniser right there, and you can check it all out and what it will all do if you so desire. And in my case, all I need to do to make Moderniser work is just simply drag and drop that script into the head section. That's it. Now, I know typically you'll put scripts down at the very bottom. This one needs to be in the head, because what it's going to do is it's going to look at the browser. And let me just add in a real quick H2 tag, Moderniser demo. This will automatically add a whole bunch of classes in to my HTML. So let me just Control F5 here. So I obviously did nothing fancy here, but let me bring up the F12 tools again. There we go. And let's go in and take a look at all of the different classes that it added in for me. So you'll notice, for example, that it added in video, audio, local storage, session storage, etc. And if it turned out that the browser didn't support that, then it would have added in the class of no-video or no-audio. So it makes it very easy for me to go in and detect whether or not something is going to work. And then what I can do in turn is I can take advantage of those classes and then show hide based on what those options happen to be. So, for example, let me just go in and add in a style here. And, oh, how do I want to do this? I want to do video. So I'm sort of just like changing my mind here as we go. Let's just say color equals red. And I think that's going to do it. I think that will actually give me kind of what I want as a very simple little demo here. Yeah, okay. So what you're going to notice here, there we go, is just like that, my text is red. Why? Well, because of the fact that I now support video. And so what I could also do, kind of go one step further with this, is maybe I just go in and say my H2 tags if we have video, then again, let's go ahead and make that red, and let's just hit refresh. Why you? Oh, because I need it like that. Okay, but in any event, I'm just going to leave it like that and just kind of show this off. The main point that I want to make is that it will automatically add in all of those classes based on my feature support. And then what I can do is I can take advantage of those classes, see whether or not they're there, and then start to show and hide things based on the feature support. So if maybe you want to fall back to Silverlight if they don't support video, or maybe if you want to display a different message, or you just want to display a picture instead, then you can go in and do that based on those classes that Moderniser is going to add in for you, which is pretty cool. And all you had to do was to simply drag and drop that Moderniser script out onto your workspace. All right. Now, one of the big things that I highlighted in the prior module is media queries, CSS. Now, what you want to do is make sure that you're sizing things based on the CSS rather than on the JavaScript. Because again, the more JavaScript that you add in, the slower things are going to wind up being. And what's cool about media queries is that I can detect almost anything. So I can detect the screen size. I can detect the orientation. And I can even detect the device type. And you'll notice that we've got device types for screen, which is going to be like a desktop, print, for when somebody goes to print. By the way, real quick aside, on that print thing, I get an awful lot of questions about how to show hide things when somebody goes to print. Use that print media query. Makes it very easy to go in and do. We've got projector on an overhead. And then we've got handheld. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, boy, you've got handheld. That's awesome. That must mean that whenever I want to target a mobile device, that all I have to do is just simply use the handheld device type inside of our media queries. No. Handheld is actually deprecated. Handheld was there for the old types of devices where maybe you had kind of the ability to scroll up and down, but that was really about it, that you didn't have an actual touch screen. That's really what handheld is there for. The other thing is, think about it for a second. What's handheld going to tell me? It's going to tell me that it's a mobile device. Okay, well, and forgive me, I put everything down below, but is that going to tell me that it's this size or this size? I don't know. And obviously, if I'm targeting this size or if I'm targeting this size, I need things to look different. So will handheld tell me whether or not it's a mobile device? Yes. But is it going to give me enough information? Is it going to tell me what I need to know to make sure that my app looks the best in that particular size of device? And the answer to that is no. And that is where, there we go, we get into things like orientation, which is going to give me portrait and landscape, and we get into screen sizing. Now, the biggest thing that I want you to note about screen sizing is width and height versus device width and height. That width and height are going to give me the width and height of the viewport of the browser window. Device width and height are going to give me the device's width and height. Now, personally for me, and I don't know if you're any different, Jeremy, but for me, the one that I typically target is the width and the height. And the reason that I target that is because I also want to make sure that I'm picking up my desktops as well. So that way, if somebody has their browser window kind of shrunk down on their desktop, that I'm going to show them how things are going to look I'm going to show them a better interface for their display being shrunk down like that. That's really a better way to say that. And that's personally the way that I like to target things. It also makes it easier for testing as well. I don't know if you're any different.
I think it's not just a preference either. I think that's really the right way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. All right. Well then, let's talk a little bit about those media queries. And let's remember again our cascading rules. So highest precedence to lower precedence, the best match is going to win. And keep in mind that your media query sections are going to override your generic rules. Now, I'm going to get in and take a look at my demo here. And what I'm going to do with my demo is kind of use a little bit of color for my demo. And you saw me use that earlier. And I always like using color whenever I'm doing CSS demos because it's such an easy thing to see. That way I'm not worried about showing or hiding things or resizing. Let's just show the fact that yes, okay, it's picking up, and then we can sort of take that to the next step. So let me create a real quick just HTML page, and this is going to be my media queries. There we go. And then let me just add in an H2 right here and media queries. There we go. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a bit of style here, and let's use our H2, and let's go ahead and say that our color is going to be red. All right, so when I launch this, and I'm going to use the snap feature, and in Windows 7 was my idea. I loved those commercials. In any event, most of these references are just for my own entertainment. It's okay. In any event, I want you to notice the browser over on the right-hand side, the Internet Explorer over my Visual Studio over here on the left-hand side. You'll notice right now that my color is set to red. So now what I want to do is I want to add in a media query. Just simply say @media. And then in parentheses, I'm going to say my minimum width, so we'll say minimum width, and I'm going to make this, let's say, 640 pixels. So if the browser window is at least 640 pixels, then I want for my H2 elements the color to be blue. Now what I want you to notice here is this part right here. Is there anything fancy there? Is there anything out of the ordinary? Is there anything that isn't CSS 101 there? And you're giving me the exact right answer. Yeah, the answer is no. There's nothing that's out of the ordinary there. And that's the point that I want to make, and that's the great part about using our media queries, is that I just simply add in this little container here that says media, and then everything inside of there is only going to apply if the browser is at least 640 pixels, in my case, wide. And then we're going to make the color blue. So now let me go ahead and hit save. Let me go ahead and hit refresh. And now you'll notice that my color is blue. Now the other thing that I want you to notice here is that I set the color to be red up top. Remember the rules of cascading. The better you describe your target, that's going to take precedence. So I better described my target by saying that I wanted this to be at least 640 pixels, so that's what won out. So what's great about this is that I can put all of my global settings up at the top, and then I can change things for the particular media sizes by going in and adding my different media queries in down at the bottom. So let's go in and add one more in. Let's go ahead and say media, and then we'll say min width, colon, and let's say 1024 pixels. Here we go. And let's go ahead and say H2. And let's say color, and let's go with green. There we go. And now let's go ahead and hit save. Let's come over here and hit refresh. And you're going to notice that it's still blue. And just to kind of prove that I am, in fact, hitting refresh, you'll notice it's still blue. And the reason that it's still blue is that it's between 640 and 1024. So it's at least 640. It's not as big as 1024, so it's going to be blue. That's what's going to win. But you'll notice that if I go in and I resize, it automatically changed to green. So it automatically will apply the appropriate style based on my browser resizing. So if there's something that I want to show or hide, If there's something that I want to collapse for a smaller screen, then I can do that very easily inside of here. So let's say maybe I add in an H3 real quick, or another, yeah, let's do an H3. And I'm going to give this a class of banner, and this is a big banner. Okay, so now let's go ahead and hit refresh. There's my big banner. But I only want that to appear on my bigger devices. So on my smaller devices, maybe I want that to disappear. So what I could do, let's just come up here to my main styles, is let's go ahead and say dot banner. I love the IntelliSense inside of Visual Studio.
It's wonderful.
And let's go in and say display none. All right, so now let's come back over here. Let's hit refresh. You'll notice that it's now gone. And now let's come back over here and let's say that for my bigger screens, banner. And let's go in and say display. And inline block. Perfect. There we go. And now let's hit save. Let's come back over here, hit refresh. Whoops. Hit refresh. And now you'll notice that there is my big banner displaying. And you'll also notice that if I go in, resize, 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 that it now disappears. So it makes it very easy for me to now show hide, resize, and move things around based on the browser size. Now I'm going to make one small change here. I'm just going to take this. Oops. Yeah, I did have the right block. Okay. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to move that right up here. So now you're going to notice that I've got my 1024 here, and I've got my 640 down below. And now let's go ahead and hit save. Let's go ahead and hit refresh and resize. And you'll notice that my banner is going away and showing back up. But my color is still blue. One of the things to keep in mind when you're doing your media queries based on screen size is that, unfortunately, it is going to apply these in order. So when you lay these out, you either want to go, if you're using the max size, so if I was using max, this would be perfect. Go big to small. But since I'm using min, I want to go small to big. Just keep that in mind. And actually, it's not a bad idea just to get yourself into this habit right now. Because again, the whole goal is mobile first. So if we go from small to big, mobile first, small first, big later. That's the way that our CSS needs to be put together. Cool. All right. So now let me bring up my slides again. And now let's go ahead and introduce something near and dear to my heart, Bootstrap. I did a relatively simple CSS demo. And I think we can all see how our CSS could get away from us very quickly. Things can get very complex. And there's a lot of technologies that are out there that will help. I mean, certainly less is a wonderful thing. Less is more. But even then, oh, come on, that was funny, Jeremy. You can laugh. Thank you, thank you. But in any event, even then, things can become very confusing very quickly. And I'm a firm believer that the best code in the world is the code that's already written. Thus enter Bootstrap, the code that's already written. Because what's great about Bootstrap is out of the box, it's designed to be responsive. Out of the box, it's designed for mobile first. And for the most part, it just works. It just does its thing and automatically will resize based on my device size. Now, a couple of cool little advantages to Bootstrap. Again, out of the box, it's responsive. It gives me a grid system. Come on. I know that there's somebody out there that's listening to this that's still doing layouts using tables. I'll admit I did that for years. It really was probably not till about a year and a half ago that I finally made the move away from doing layout with tables. The reason that I did it was because it's simple or easier. Stop. And this is one great thing about Bootstrap is it gives me a grid system. Makes it very easy for me to lay things out in a table-esque style of fashion without it actually being tables. In addition, there's a huge community around Bootstrap. Take 2 seconds. Go Bing the phrase Bootstrap theme, and you will find hundreds, thousands of different themes that all you have to do is just drag and drop them into your project, drag and drop them onto your page, and poof, it just works. And all of the little things that you're looking for, things like nice big buttons for the user to be able to tap on, more on that later, all of those come out of the box with Bootstrap. And you'll actually notice that Visual Studio comes out of the box with Bootstrap. And we're going to get that responsive layout that our browser, inside of IE, big desktop, and inside of our little Lumia or Microsoft phone, over on the right-hand side, all of that is going to be because of the magic of Bootstrap. Now, if you remember from before, I did a demo over here real quickly on bundling. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to launch that. Now, if you remember when I did this demo, all that I did was just simply created an MVC project. And out of the box, it gave me Bootstrap. And what Bootstrap is going to give me is it's going to give me that little spot right up at the very top there. That little navigation banner, that's Bootstrap. This little, what's called the Jumbotron, true story, right there. And then these columns down below. And you'll also notice that this will automatically change when I start to resize things. So you'll notice that right now, we went from 3 columns down to 1 column. And if I keep on resizing, you'll also notice that all of my navigation has gone away. And then up here at the very right, you're going to notice that I've got those 3 little lines. Also, it's known as a hamburger. Now let's pause for a moment here and let's talk. Because you actually asked me this when I was doing the Bootstrap. You were actually next door recording something with Michael Palermo that day on WinJS.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you asked me what my opinion was of hamburger, of that little icon. And it's a great question because here's the problem. Let's cut to my screen real quick. What am I supposed to do with this? I don't know. I mean, it's not necessarily overly clear that if I click on that, something good is going to happen. Now, I know that if I click on that, something's going to happen. And Jeremy, you know that if you click on that, something's going to happen. And I'm willing to bet most of our audience knows if they click on that something good is about to happen. But I'm also willing to bet that there's a significant number of your users that aren't able to pick that up. And this is really just a good design guideline in general. Make it very easy, very plain, very clear for your users. I don't know what 3 little lines means. I know because of experience, but not because, at least to me, maybe I'm alone in this, but I don't know, at least to me, that that's clear without that background information. Now, if instead, maybe you throw in a little, actually I'm going to do it over here. There we go. Maybe you throw in a little triangle. Well, triangle makes it a little bit clearer because that's pointing down. And that's used in a lot of different environments, like drop-down boxes, to indicate that if you click on this, something's going to happen. Or maybe you also add in a little bit of text that maybe you go in and you say, menu, like that. And now you're making it crystal clear that if that's what they do, that's now what's going to happen. And so you could go in and start adding all of that in as needed. So if I went into my layout, up here at the very top, there's my little navigation. There is that little button with that little header there. There's all my little span icons. I could go in and change out those little icons to be other glyphs. So if I want that to be a dropdown, I could make that a dropdown. If I wanted to add in a little bit of text to say menu instead, I could go in and add that in. And this actually brings me to another very big point, which is a lot of people see Bootstrap. And first of all, they're immediately confused by the roughly 4 billion classes that are in Bootstrap. I don't think I'm exaggerating by that much. But they also start to feel like, well, this is what I'm stuck with. And the answer to that is 100% not at all. That you can go in and customize this to your heart's content. And again, there's a whole bunch of themes that will make things look not like Bootstrap. And if you'll forgive me the shameless plug, John Galloway and I did our MVA on Bootstrap, that if you just go to mva.ms, just do a real quick search for Bootstrap, you can see a full day on Bootstrap goodness, and go check it out if you want to know more about Bootstrap. Cool. All right. Now, let's talk about images, and let's talk about what not to do. I think that's always kind of a good learning technique.
Start there, yeah.
Yeah, start with what not to do. Okay. Alrighty. So let me, I want set a startup project, and let me add in a real quick image page here. So this is going to be my image. There we go. And images, and I'm just going to go grab that little file right there. So there is a little image, and Jeremy, you're going to recognize this here in just a couple of minutes. Let me go ahead and launch this.
Look at that.
I needed an image, and I needed an image I could use. I'm like, oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so there is an image. Okay. Well, let's say that I want to get this ready for sizing in a mobile device. So maybe what I do is I just go in and I say style equals width, and let's say 500 pixels. Now, before I do that, before I hit save here, let me fire up my F12 tools. Let me bring up the network. Let me start recording, and let me hit refresh here. And what I want you to notice, there's the size of the image, 204K. Now I've decided I want to resize this. And as we all know, if we just simply set maybe the width, the height will go proportional. So I'm going to change that width to be 500 pixels. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to hit refresh. And you'll notice, sure enough, that's 500 pixels. But what I also want you to notice, how big was the image? Still 204K. So all that we did was we resized the display, but we didn't resize the image.
We basically asked the browser to resize it for us.
Exactly.
And I've noticed that the browsers don't all use the same algorithms for resizing. They may or may not resample it the way that you want.
Exactly, exactly. And on top of that, having a smaller version of the image isn't necessarily what we want. That maybe what we want instead is a cropped version of the image. Because if we shrink this down, what we're also doing is we're taking a little bit of detail away. Because what I'm really hoping to do here is I'm hoping to focus in our attention on Jeremy and Stacy and not necessarily on the surrounding background. Now, if we have more space, then sure, absolutely, let's bring the surrounding background in. But if we don't, let's focus in on exactly this. So what we really want out of all of this is we really want not just simply big image shrunken down, but we want different versions of that image. And so you'll notice that I created different versions. So I've got a medium version, and I've got a small version. And so you'll notice on each one, I just got rid of more and more background. That's what we want. And what I want to do is I want to figure out what size the browser is, and then send down the right image based on that browser size. And unfortunately, there isn't a mechanism that's available right out of the box to do this. All right. Well, then what are our options here? Option one, and this is really the best option if you can do it, is to generate SVG graphics. These are great for things like logos and otherwise. And the name says it all. Scalable, resizable, vector, as opposed to a bitmap, so it's going to say, I want a line from here to here. And then again, graphics. And what's nice about this is that the images are created declaratively. It's a lot less data, quite often, that's going to be needed in other places. The problem, however, is some browsers don't support this. And you also have to go in and generate the SVG. And I'm going to show you a simple SVG here. Let me go back to Visual Studio. There we go. And there is my little SVG. There's my very simple. You'll notice I'm just going to be drawing two little polygons there. And what I'm doing is I'm setting up my SVG to be 200 by 200. There's my little canvas. And then what I'm going to be doing is drawing from 1010 to 19010 to 190 190 to 10 190, and then again, sort of an off angle there. And you'll notice that when I run this, there is all of that by using vector graphics. Now that really is a great way to go about doing things. There are tools that will generate the SVG for you. And come the next module, when we get into touch and potentially resizing things, we'll even see that all of this is actually DOM objects. So I can go in and set up event handlers, and I can go in and access this through the DOM. So if I want to be able to resize it, I can.
And not just the whole thing altogether, but any of the individual components of it.
Exactly.
Christopher, would you mind if we went back to your discussion about images and we answer a question that's in the chat room, which is, why does Bootstrap provide the img-responsive class if it's not recommended to resize the images in the browser directly?
I don't have a good answer.
Well, that's okay. We'll try to get that one answered offline.
Okay, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I don't have a good answer. I think, if I was to take a stab at this, if this was an exam question, my answer to that...
C.
Yes, C. Whatever the longest text is. No, my answer to that would be, sometimes all that you want is just to go ahead and resize it, or maybe the image itself isn't necessarily all that big. I mean, when you get right down to it, if you have a 100K image, is it going to be the end of the world if you send down 100K versus 20K? Not necessarily. So that's where that can come into play. So it's kind of a very simple little solution, but it's certainly not going to be the best possible solution that's available. Okay. All right. Now, so option one, and again, this is the best option if you can do it, is to go with SVG. Option two is to use the picture element. Now, what's great about the picture element is that it works very similar to the audio and video elements, where what I can do is specify multiple images and then specify media queries to go along with it. So if you're looking at this screen size, do this. If you're looking at this screen size, do this. It's fantastic. The problem, however, is unfortunately, very few browsers support the picture element out of the box. However, Scott and I'm going to go with jail. But Scott actually put together, and forgive me for mispronouncing a last name there, a fantastic little bit of JavaScript that will simulate the picture element using the same syntax as the draft standard. So that way, as more and more browsers support it, the HTML that you're using today will still work in the future. And on the slide here, I actually have the URL to the GitHub where you can go download it. So let's go take a look at this.
Is there a website where I can go that will tell me, this is a loaded question, I know the answer, but I'm just going to
go ahead.
Throw you a softball here. Is there a website where I can go that will tell me what, of all these browser features, which one are going to be supported in my browser?
Yes. I have...
Oh, you're going to be discussing this later. See, I'm just getting ahead of you now.
Oh, well, go ahead and say it. I know I've got it on a slide. I just can't remember what slide I've got it on.
We'll see if we use the same one. I go to caniuse.com.
Yes, that's it.
There
yes.
you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, and what that will do is it will actually give you a very nice little table that will show you what browsers support what. So, very easy. Okay. So now let me go up and bring in picture fill here. And I want to focus in on two parts of this. The first part is this picture element. And with this picture element, what we can do is then specify, very similar to how we would in audio or video, the different sources that we want to be able to use. But unlike the video, where we're looking to maybe stream MP4, and then failing that, step back to OGG, and then failing that, maybe stepping back to Flash, what we're looking to do is send down different pictures based on the browser size. And so you'll notice over here, here's my media query. So for 1024, we're going to send down the big image. For 800 pixels, we're going to send down the medium picture. And for 640, then we're going to send down the small picture. And then you'll also notice that we've got a fallback down there at the very bottom. Okay. So let me now bring this up. Let me bring in the F12 tools here, just so we can see the network behind the scenes. And I'm going to hit refresh. And what I want you to notice on the network is we pulled down the HTML, we pulled down the JavaScript, and then we pulled down just the big picture. That's it. Now, let me go in and resize my browser. And now you'll notice that when I did that resize, it automatically grabbed the small picture. Because now we're between 640 and I think I did 800 pixels. And then if I resize this back out, resize, there you're going to notice, sure enough, that it now grabbed the medium. So it grabbed the picture based on the browser size itself. Now, you might be thinking at this point, well, wait a minute, Christopher. Over time, it looks like all three versions of those pictures are going to wind up being downloaded. Is that the case? And the answer is probably not.
Unless they're using a large screen and they're resizing their browser.
Exactly. And in that case, that's going to be just fine. But typically, and of course, this is really where we're targeting this at, we're targeting it at devices like this. We're targeting it at devices like this, and I'm not on camera, but we're targeting it at devices where the browser takes up that was just perfect timing. The browser takes up the entire screen. So we're not necessarily worried about the user resizing their browser, but of course if they do, we want to make sure that the site still looks its best. Now the last option is to use the background image capability inside of CSS. Add in a div tag, and then just set the background image, and then we can also go with media queries to go in and set everything up appropriately. Now, this does work, but it's a little bit hacky because you're not sending down an image the way that you typically would. You're putting it inside of a div tag. But let's go in and see how it works anyway. So let me bring back up. There we go. And let me add in, right-click, add HTML page, and this is going to be my background image. There we go, and let's go in and say div ID equals image. Perfect. Okay, so now let's go in and set up my style, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say media, and I'm going to say min width, and let's go ahead and say 640 pixels. And now what I'm going to do, and I, again, love the IntelliSense here. I want that to be my small image. You're supposed to work. Oh, I know why. Because I forgot to do this. Image. There we go. It helps if you feed it enough information. So all I did was just drag and drop it, automatically threw in that background image. Now the one little catch is you are going to need to set the height and the width appropriately, so that way it can display the image correctly. So let me just go in and find the height and the width here. Properties 550 by 272, 550, 272. And then let's go in and kind of make my life a little bit easier here. Let's just copy, paste, copy, paste. Let's just go with 800 and there we go. And let's go ahead and drag out the medium one. And where's my medium and my properties? And that is 780 by 518. 780, 518. And then last but not least, for my 1024 and MVA prep and 1000 by 562. Okay. By the way, you are going to notice that I obviously didn't scale these kind of in accordance with one another. I was just looking for a few images that we could play around with. But in any event, let me go ahead and Control F5, and let's again bring up the F12 tools, and let's again see what the network is doing. And you'll notice that it's just pulling down the one image. So if I zoom in here, you're going to notice that it just pulled down the big one. And if I resize, that when I did that, it pulled down, in this case, the medium one. And then when I resize one more time, that it pulled down the smaller ones. So I get the same kind of capabilities that I got with that picture element. But again, we're sort of hacking at it. So I would much rather see you use something like picture fill than I would see you use something like this. This works, it's nice. But again, let's try to put in image tags. Let's try to put in picture tags and go at it that way.
May I have the floor?
Absolutely.
I would like to show something that I learned and am kind of excited about. This is something that I figured out a while ago, and I've used it a number of times. What I did was I just ran into CodePen here. If you're not familiar with CodePen, CodePen is a great way to just write your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript kind of on the fly. Yep. It's a lot like JS Fiddle if you haven't used it before, or Plunker. CodePen is my online editor of choice. You can save and fork and share and all that good stuff. And now, let me tell you what I've done here is I have included an image from the internet that looks like this. This is a public domain image of the city of Seattle where we're presenting from. We're actually near Seattle. Anyway, so this is the actual size of the photo. I've just brought it in with an image tag, okay?
Yep.
But up above it here, I have done this definitely not recommended to bring in a huge image, but shrink it down to really small.
Yep.
But Christopher is mentioning the background and the ability to bring an image into the background, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm bringing this image in. This is actually using the shortcut syntax for the background image.
But
it works the same. It infers that for you. So I'm using this same URL. Now I'm using this is what I want to show you here, the background size of cover. Now this is a really helpful property in the right situation, because what this is doing is it's taking it down in size for you, but it's also making sure that it's going to fit inside the box. So I specified that my box is 200 by 180. So let me go ahead and just make this more obvious and say 100 by 100. So now this is a small box, and when I update that, you can see that it's a small box and it's just clipping off the right and left edges of this. Now if I were to make this box, as opposed to making it square so that the sides got clipped off, if I were to make it really wide, so let's make this say 900 pixels, let's make it 1,000 pixels wide. Go ahead and refresh that. Now you can see that the top and bottom are getting clipped off, and that's not the best way to illustrate it. Let's try this. That's still not bringing in any of the picture. Let's try this. And anyway, that picture has a lot of sky in it. But anyway, that's a really cool property that's helped me out a great deal.
Awesome. So, I like it.
If you want to go look at it, you can go to codepen.io/codefoster, and there's actually the URL for the pen right there.
Perfect. Okay. Last little thing that I want to touch on, and we got asked this actually in the Q&A, is about mimicking apps. That we talked before about the fact that these apps are not going to be in the store. But people still want them on their little shortcut screen. So can we do that? And the answer is 100% yes. That just because it's not an app doesn't mean that we don't want it to behave like one. And it also doesn't mean that we can't make it behave like one. We absolutely can. So we can, in certain scenarios, get control over the browser. Now, one of the things that you can do is hide the address bar, and you can see that down at the bottom. One of the other things that you can do is you can take control over the viewport by using the viewport meta tag. And Jeremy and I talked about this real briefly kind of yesterday about the viewport and the meta tag. And here's what I'm going to say about the viewport meta tag. It does give you the ability to control a lot of the user experience. So if you want to, for example, disable scrolling, you can do that with the viewport meta tag. But I want to say, be very careful about doing that. Because if you're saying you're not allowed to scroll, then if somebody does need to zoom in, maybe to read the text a little bit better, they're not going to be able to very easily do that. So can you take complete control over that viewport and about how things are going to be displayed? The short answer to that is yes, but I want you to think very carefully before you go in and do that. Now, what I want to focus my attention in on is creating icons. And unfortunately, basically, every single vendor has created their own mechanism for how to set up an icon for when a web app has been quote unquote installed onto their home screen. And you can go check out the Wikipedia article, which will sort of link to you from there. What I want to focus in on is making a live tile. So let's do this real quick here. I'm going to fire up Paint. And let's go ahead and just kind of resize this. And let's go ahead and grab a brush. And this is going to now be the cool icon. There we go. That's going to be it.
For the pretzel app.
For the pretzel app. That's my knot. That's going to be our icon for our frayed knot. And this is going to be icon. There we go. And let's go ahead and hit save. Now, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to take advantage of the live tile capabilities inside of Windows. That if I go back to my start screen, what you're going to notice is that things are happening here. So it's automatically, updating my screen, showing me different pictures and images and so forth based on the information that those apps want to push out to me. That's really cool. And I can do that without actually having to create an app. But there are a couple of resources that I'm going to need, and all of those are going to be available at let me make sure I've got my URL, my pinned site.com. Cool. So, first thing, build your tile. All right. Give me the tile, the text, and this is going to be frayed knot. Give me the background color. And let's go in and, we'll go like that.
Color of rope.
Color of rope. That looks like rope to me. We'll go with it.
Yep.
Okay, give me an image, upload, and pictures, and there we go. Cool. And now it's going to say, all right, well, give me all the different sizes. So let's go 128 by 128. There we go. Let's go 270 by 270. There we go. And I love this over here, that it actually shows how it's going to look if they resize accordingly. Let's go with 270 by 578. And this image doesn't work real well for that, but I think we can go like that. And then 580 by 588, and we'll go ahead and crop like that. Perfect. So now I've got the 4 image sizes that I'm going to need. Let's hit next. And then it says, all right, well, if you have an RSS feed that will give us the live tile information, you can go ahead and give me the RSS feed there. I don't. So I'm just going to go to next step. And there is the code. I'm just going to download that little package and hit open. And now let me go ahead and hit open, and I'm going to copy all of those into my little demos, paste. There we go, and let's go into Visual Studio and have all of those imported in. Show me all my files, and boom, 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 boom. Okay, now here's what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm getting everything set for this site to be pinned to my start screen. So that way, I'm gonna have my little tile, and I'm also gonna set it up with notifications as well. So that way, if maybe we want to alert the viewing public that we've set up a brand new knot, then they'll see that inside of that live tile. So I'm basically making this behave like an app, even though it's not actually an app. Now, those are all the different bits and pieces that it's going to need to behave properly. There's just a couple last little items that I'm going to need to add in. So I want that. So let me go into my browser config that it created, and let's paste in my notifications. Now my notifications, it's going to go every 180 minutes, and it's going to point to this little XML file that's going to send down that information to the live knot. So if there was any new information that you wanted to send down, update this XML file. And I would also like to mention that you can, of course, send down XML files by sending down the appropriate header information, the appropriate MIME type. You don't have to have a static XML file for this.
Just feed one. Yep.
Exactly. Yep. All right. And the other piece that I'm going to need, let's go in and say add and HTML page, and let's say tile and frayed knot and H2 frayed knot pinned site. There we go. Now let's go ahead and grab the other little bit of code that I'm going to need, which is those two little parts right there. Cool. That's it. So now when I open this page, and in particular, when I open this page inside of my, come on. Thank you. When I open it inside of the immersive experience here, and I click favorites, and I click pinned, you're going to notice that it's now got that cool little icon.
Very cool icon.
my awesome drawing. I'm going to say pin to start. And now you're going to notice when I scroll all the way over that there is my cool little live tile. And you'll also notice, there we go, that if I go in and resize it, I can get it large. I go in and I resize it, and I can get it medium, and
small.
There it is, and also small as well.
Can I add something on?
Absolutely.
So this is just a kind of a fun little nugget. I'm going to take you to, I'm going to take you, this is not really a plug. I'm just going to use this as an example, but here's my...
Oh, let it be a plug. It's okay.
It's a plug. Here's my website. Now, this is my website intended for humans, right? This is intended for people to see. If I go up to my feed
as opposed
address...
to the one for dogs?
Yeah, exactly. No, as opposed to the one for robots. If I go in and put feed, you're going to see that Internet Explorer is coming back with this as an RSS feed, right?
Yep.
So for your pinned tile, you were looking for an RSS feed, and I want to show you this fun thing. If I go to Bing and I do a search for, let's say, jelly beans, it's going to come back with a web search for jelly beans, right? These are some results. Well, if I go up to that URL, and let me just bring you up here to where I'm typing, and I type another, I want to do another parameter, and I say format equals RSS, now it brings that back to me as an RSS feed.
Yep.
So you can get any search you want from Bing as an RSS feed. You could use that to drive the content behind your pinned tile.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so you can actually keep using what you've been using.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it. Cool. So here's what we got. what we saw here was how to get in and start designing things. So we took a look at how to show things, hide things, move things around by using our media queries. We took a look at how to detect things by using Moderniser. We took a look at Bootstrap and how Bootstrap can hopefully make your life easier. And we also saw how we can resize with images and then closed everything out by adding in that live tile. So we've seen a lot of the different tools, but we still need more tools. So let's take 10, we'll come back, and then we'll take a look at how we can incorporate touch. So we'll see you guys back here in 10 minutes.